Thanks for that great introduction. I'm a senior research scientist at Sandbox. So I'm in the quantum security group. So as a company, we do lots and lots of things quantum. Simulation, optimization. I'm here today to talk to you about the security aspect of things. This whole talk is going to be about post-quantum cryptography. So I'm just going to give you a rundown of what's happened in the landscape of post-quantum, and then give you some what's happening in the real world, how people are experimenting with post-quantum crypto, and some of the projects that have been going on within standardizations, with governments, what tools we have that are post-quantum secure. So just a quick primer on post-quantum cryptography. This is the only slide that has any quantum algorithms involved. So this is like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we have Shor's algorithm, we have Grover's algorithm. Both of these give us really cool speed-ups in quantum hardware. So we have an exponential speed-up of factoring integers. This obviously requires a large fault-tolerant quantum computer. And using this algorithm, we actually break almost all of our public key crypto online that we use. So this breaks RSA, this is the integer factorization problem. This breaks elliptic curve cryptography, which requires the discrete logarithm problem. Grover's algorithm is slightly different. It affects our asymmetric schemes. So this is something like AES or Char-Char. This doesn't affect cryptography as much. Basically, it means we need to double the size of our implementation. So if we're looking to get 128 bits secure, we need to use AES 256. So that's how we fix that issue. But with Shor's algorithm, we need a whole revamp of the asymmetrical schemes that we use in our day-to-day lives. So what we want really is a new method for public key encryption, or a way in which we share a key. And we need a way to do authentication again, so some sort of signature scheme as well. So the main thing that has been going on in this area is the NIST post-quantum standardization process. So this began in 2016. NIST had a call for submissions in which they gave a list of things that they would like to see in this post-quantum effort. 82 submissions were submitted, and for the first round, 69 of these were accepted. So in the beginning, some of these were either withdrawn or attacked, so some weaknesses were found. But in the end, 69 were accepted. And as we see the progression of the years going by, we see like a second round, third round. Basically, NIST asks for more scrutinization on specific things. So in the first round, we might have seen more scrutinization on the cryptanalysis, the hardness problems, the maths. But the second and third rounds were more focused on how these schemes perform in the real world. So the code size, how many operations per second we're getting, how big are the keys, how does it perform in TLS, for example. So recently, in July this year, they gave us the results. So we got the first set of standards. So we got a key encapsulation mechanism, or a KEM, and we got 3 signature schemes. So 4 other schemes were put forward into like a 4th round. So they require a bit more scrutiny on the hardness problems that they use. And next year, NIST are also asking for more proposals for signature schemes. So there'll be lots of different types of other paradigms that we might see next year as well. And as well as NIST, we have other standards bodies as well that are sort of following or have explicitly said they're going to follow what NIST have said. So you're talking about the German BSI, ANSI, the French standards bodies as well. They recently said in French, we're happy with the selection of candidates that NIST have made. And even some of them also support alternatives or those that weren't selected by NIST. So there's schemes called Frodo Chem and Classic Macalise, which haven't been selected as standards yet, but they like them because they're very, very conservative. They're just not performant enough for NIST. And it's also worth noting that China have their own post-quantum standards, so they've been selected for about a year or two now, and so yeah, we have some of those as well. So yeah, you might be wondering like why we need to worry, and I think Mark had a slide on this as well a while ago. So this is what we call the store now, decrypt later problem. So if you transition to post-quantum cryptography and you want your data to be secure for a certain period of time, if a practical quantum computer comes along before those two periods, like added together, then you're going to have a vulnerable data, sensitive data that might be readable by a bad actor or a government or anybody that has access to a quantum computer. So this is really important for companies that are trying to hide patents or ideas that they might have that go into drugs or financial transactions and things like that. So you need to worry about this, not because we might see a quantum computer in 30 years, but now we need to worry because people might pull encrypted traffic, wait for it to be readable by using algorithms paired with a quantum computer. So the standards that we have. So there were two main standards that we got out of the four. These were both based on lattice-based cryptography. So these were called Crystals Kyber and Crystals Dilithium. And yes, they are related to Star Wars and Star Trek. So Kyber is the chem, and dilithium is the primary signature scheme. So the lattice-based cryptography is akin to a problem where if I give you a matrix A and a vector B, where B equals A times S plus some noise vector, find S. This is a very difficult problem. This is a problem that quantum computers also find difficult, as well as classical computers. And it's equivalent to finding a short vector in a lattice. The good thing about these two schemes is that they have their code bases significantly overlap. You can kind of see them as brother and sisters of each other. So when it comes to implementations and designing instruction sets and things like that, we might see a real push towards making these much more performant and on different platforms, different architectures, etc. Yeah, so Kyber was selected and dilithium was selected by NIST. This is a quote from them, basically saying, we really like these because they've been heavily studied over the last few decades, the hardness problems, and they have really good performance overall in software and hardware. There's also been quite some look at this from side channels as well, and other cryptanalytic tools. So yeah, it's got a strong theoretical security basis, and also it's really good overall performance compared to some of the other schemes. So there are two other signature schemes as well. One of these is called Falcon, and it's also based on lattice-based cryptography. It has a slightly different performance profile. So it's very complex to implement, so that might be one of the reasons why it wasn't selected as the primary candidate. But it has a lot of pros as well, so the signature size is significantly smaller. So when it comes to use cases where you have more constrained bandwidth, then this scheme could be your preferred signature scheme, and I think this is why it was chosen with dilithium, because dilithium doesn't work for every use case. And yeah, it also has fast verification. So in a use case like a smart card, for example, we might see Falcon, a post-quantum implementation on smart cards, for example, and other use cases where you might need fast verification. Yeah, and also we have Sphinx Plus. So the other three schemes that were selected are lattice-based, and NIST didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket. So they wanted another hardness problem that was also post-quantum. And Sphinx Plus gives us this. It's based on the hardness of cryptographic hash functions. It doesn't really fit all use cases, a bit like Falcon, but it's got a solid conservative security. And yeah, I think this also has quite a lot of other use cases as well where we might prefer Sphinx, for example. So how do these schemes compare with each other? The Sphinx signature scheme is the biggest one there. No, it's not. It's it's dilithium. But yeah, you can see Falcon there is significantly smaller. But yeah, this is sort of the size we're looking at. Dilithium is fast, but it's, yeah, as I said, it might be a bit too large for some applications. And yeah, Sphinx Plus is very secure, but has a large signature. I don't know why it's not there. But yeah, this is just a comparison of some of the schemes that we have as candidates. So yeah, the schemes that were selected this year, they're going to be about 1 to 2 years' time. We're going to have to wait until they're actually formally written as standards. But we do have post-quantum standards at the moment, but these weren't in the process because they slightly go out of the bound of what NIST were looking for initially. But these are called stateful hash-based signatures. These are quite similar to Sphinx, but they have slightly more nuance involved in their implementation and design. So these are called XMSS and LMS. So you can find these under IETF RFCs, and they also they've also been adopted into a NIST special publication. There's some nuances in these designs, so they require careful state management, and thus they can only sign like a limited number of messages. And so you really have to be careful when you do the implementations of these. I believe there is a NIST document just describing how to do state management. They are quite relatively slow compared to like the lattice-based schemes, but they are standards now. So if you really wanted to do post-quantum signatures now, you can use these and use the NIST standards. So, as I said, we might see more schemes standardized in the future. So, NIST have some chems that have gone into a 4th round, and they're also opening up more signature schemes in the future. So, what we have in the 4th round is we have 4 schemes, yeah. So, one of these is Psych, which is a super singular isogeny-based key exchange mechanism. This was quite liked by the community, I think, because it used some similar maths to elliptic curve cryptography. But very recently, there have been quite a few attacks on these, and they've almost been not wiped out, but it's going to be hard to see if they actually come back with fixes for the attacks. I have a slide on this later on. The other 3 are based on code-based cryptography. So that's using the maths of error-correcting codes. These give quite nice key exchange mechanisms. So they're called Bike, HQC, and Classic McAleese. I think NIST just really wants some more scrutiny, some more analysis on the performance of them, and just to see, if they need to, they've got these as a future standard. And next year we're also going to see more standards, more submissions for signatures. There's been quite a lot of research on post-quantum signatures in the last few years. Really kind of cool, exciting ideas. So one of these is using what we call MPC in the head. So this is using multi-party computation. For example, there was a scheme actually in the competition called Picnic. NIST decided not to go with Picnic into like a fourth round. I think they saw some of the other research that has happened recently and thought they might have better submissions that are similar to Picnic. So that's going to be really exciting. And also we get isogeny-based signatures as well. They can be quite slow, but if we get some more orders of magnitude sort of optimizations, they could be really interesting alternatives to lattices. So yeah, the attack that was on Psych, so this was very recently. I don't think the community yet has really got its head around this. Like the nuances involved in the attack, but a lot of the experts in this like niche field have all said they sort of believe the attack works. They sort of validate that the attack works. There's some values here just to give you an idea of how devastating the attack was. So the Psych P434 is like the 128-bit version. That's sort of broken in about 10 minutes to an hour. And then the higher security levels originally like took maybe a weekend or a day or two, and then I think recently they've cut that down using some more optimizations in the attack. So there's some really cool results there. I encourage you to look at that as well. There's some really nice ideas in that attack. And also we had another signature scheme called Rainbow, which used multivariate quadratic equations as a hardness problem. This was also recently solved, recently sort of attacked. It wasn't as devastating as the Psych one, but it did shave off quite a lot of the bits of security. So in particular, the 128-bit secure parameters were cut down significantly. I think the designers tried to move the parameter set up to cover that attack, but it's still not. It still wasn't good enough, and NIST decided not to select this and move it forward. And yeah, the title of the paper that breaks it suggests you can do it in a weekend on a laptop. So yeah, these two attacks, they were recent. They were in the last 2 or 3 months, both of them. Some people can see these two things as not having trust in post-quantum crypto, but I think it shows that what the community are doing works. NIST had so many calls where they asked for more cryptanalysis and more scrutiny, and we finally have that. So it's good that we had that, before it was made a standard, and you could kind of argue that these candidates were they made it to round 3, which is like the last round before we got these standards, as finalists and alternatives, and you could kind of argue that they were there so that we would scrutinize them more. So we could have, I mean, NIST have also said this in publications as well. These problems were understudied. So although the Psych attack was quite a surprise, having results on cryptanalysis for these hardness problems is not a surprise because they're all relatively new hardness problems. So how do you begin to sort of plug and play with these post-quantum candidates? Some people might be a bit skeptical about using post-quantum. They might not believe in the quantum threat as much, even with the store now decrypt later attack. Some people, they might not feel as secure using post-quantum when they've used elliptic curves and RSA for decades. And how do you deal with trying to convince people that they need to do this? So there is an approach that works for everyone, basically. So there's what we call hybrid algorithms, or the hybrid approach. So it's basically where we have a US standard, so RSA, or elliptic curve cryptography, and we generate a shared secret for that, and we also use a shared secret from a post-quantum chem of your choice. I'd obviously go with one of the standards that we have, that we've been given last month. So you generate both of these shared secrets, and you concatenate these and use that as the one secret. So this is good for two reasons. It complies with US standards. It complies with FIPS. It complies with the NIST standards. So you're still complying, and you also need to break both chems in order to find the entire shared secret. So you can be secure in a post-quantum world, and you can be secure even if your chem has, let's say, a weakness in the future. You've still got RSA or elliptic curves to sort of back you up there. Yeah, this is basically what I just said. So yeah, you need to break both of these shared secret mechanisms in order to find the overall shared secret. And this is the technique that's actually being adopted by most, if not all, companies or protocols, or using this in the real world. I go on to talk about this a bit later. So yeah, as I said, most people are looking at hybrid. So there's one example I can think of that is not actually going to go with the hybrid approach, as far as I know. The NSA have said this a few times, that they're going to go with a strict post-quantum solution approach, which has led to a bit of disagreement in the community. It'll be interesting to see if they continue to sort of go with that strategy. And recently, this year, the White House have also said every federal agency needs to get ready for this transition to post-quantum. They've called all the agencies to find out where they use quantum vulnerable cryptography, whether that's in data at rest or data at transit, just so that they know what to transition, what to migrate. So yeah, that's everything on the primer. So I think I've kind of tried to build up a bit of a foundation there, so you can sort of see where post-quantum is being used in the real world. But yeah, as I'm sure you know, public key cryptography is used everywhere in our day-to-day lives, on the internet, offline, on our phones, on all of our devices. So you're looking at certificates, VPNs, TLS, secure emails, SSH, all of these use cases, they need to be transitioned to post-quantum. There's loads of others as well, end-to-end encryption, network infrastructure, big data, clouds, and yeah, everything will need to be transitioned. But the important thing to realize is this is not a drop-in. You can't just pull out elliptic curves and drop in post-quantum. Everything needs to have a holistic approach or an ad hoc solution. And yeah, there's lots of different ways this is being addressed in the community. So yeah, one thing that I perhaps didn't make clear already is that post-quantum has a performance drawback. I think we got really lucky with elliptic curve cryptography. We have really fast implementations, really small bandwidth, small keys, and this is definitely not going to be the case with post-quantum. So the way we deal with that in protocols such as TLS is going to be really interesting. The ITF especially are working on lots of different working groups to try and address specific problems that come with post-quantum. So yeah, there's lots of work on TLS. One proposal is called Chem-TLS, which does TLS essentially without any handshakes, signatures, just using the chems themselves. And yeah, things that chems require that we've got differently from elliptic curves. So the Diffie-Hellman paradigm is something we have essentially lost. So this non-interactivity that we get from Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which was foundational in, for example, the signal protocol. Chems are interactive, so these really don't drop in and replace Diffie-Hellman. So yeah, there's been research that have looked into post-quantumizing the signal protocols, especially the double ratchet that's in the signal protocol itself. Yeah, and more secure like internet. So we have more and more projects that the ITF are doing. So they're doing some really cool work. So one thing that we will have to deal with when we use post-quantum is more fragments in TLS or in IKE. So there's one core project that's looking to have like an intermediate exchange. So this will help deal with more of the fragments, and this effectively borrows ideas that we're trying to thwart denial of service. So effectively what we're doing with post-quantum is doing like a mini denial of service. So this is trying to do to help both things at the same time. Yeah, some more work on SSH. And we also have the OpenSSH have also integrated post-quantum as standard, as by default. They've gone with a scheme called entry prime, which was not selected by NIST as a standard. I don't know why. They might go with Kyber at some point in the future. But yeah, OpenSSH is post-quantum by standard now, using the hybrid approach. And yeah, some more VPNs work as well, so on WireGuard and OpenVPN. I looked into their schemes recently and they were using Rainbow and Cyc. One was using Rainbow, one was using Cyc, but obviously it's in a hybrid setting, so it's kind of okay, but I hope they fix that at some point in the future. Yeah, more work on secure email, OpenPGP. Yeah, I mean, there's loads and loads of stuff going on. There's loads of other standards bodies looking into this as well. The ITU, for example. And we're integrating this into things like Thunderbird as well, so that's kind of cool. X509. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on here. And yeah, as I said, the stateful hash-based signatures are a standard, so we can begin to use these. And actually, although they're kind of tricky to implement, they have some really cool use cases where they're really suited. So software updates and secure boot are really ideal for their schemes, actually. Yeah, and PKIs, CAs, and RAs as well. So if you really wanted to, you could start using these in the real world. Yeah. Another use case that's kind of we're considering is vehicle-to-vehicle communications. So one thing that's really key with them is the bandwidth restriction. So they were, as a lot of other products, had been designed around the low bandwidth you get with elliptic curves. So one thing we're going to have to deal with in vehicle-to-vehicle is the fragments, basically. So we've had some work by one of our colleagues that looking into how we deal with fragments, trying to get those down by using some optimization techniques so that cars don't start crashing into each other if we use post-quantum. So yeah, that was kind of a lot of a quick overview of how post-quantum is being used in the real world. There's some things, as I said, that we haven't really got at the moment. So I just thought I'd have a slide here going on like a wish list of what we might really want to see now that we have a chem and a signature scheme that we can use. So yeah, the non-interactivity that we got with ECTH gave us a lot of simplicity, but it was really ingrained in a lot of our protocols. So if we can come up with a way to have a non-interactive key exchange using a post-quantum paradigm, that would be ideal. I think the scheme that was broken, Psych, kind of gave us that. We had a SIDH, but yeah, that was attacked. So I don't know if we can do this with other schemes like lattices and codes, but it might be something to look into. We have other protocols such as noise, which heavily relied on Diffie-Hellman as well. There have been proposals for post-quantum noise using chems, but I think they take quite a hit on performance, so whether we can gain that back somehow is another open problem. And similarly with the Diffie-Hellman, we have password authenticated key exchange, and can we get a better performance with that protocol as well? DNSSEC has also a lot of restrictions thanks to elliptic curves, small signatures, and fast verification. Can we do this in a post-quantum way, or yeah, can we change? I don't think we can change this, but like, and the same thing for the quick network protocol as well. So yeah, there's lots of open problems here, as well as like, using post-quantum in blockchains. There was a recent study that said 25% of all Bitcoin are potentially vulnerable to a quantum attack, which is a lot of money. So this needs to be addressed. Post-quantum needs to be integrated into this. And how you do this, how you migrate to an inherently distributed system is a question that needs to be answered as well. So yeah, that was quite a heavy talk. I think I've gone a bit fast, but I hope what you take away from this talk is that yeah, keep cryptographic agility in mind when you want to look to the migration to post-quantum. This will like significantly ease the process, especially when it comes to things like cryptanalysis or yeah, just using different standards. So we have 4 standards now. They all have their own use cases where they can be used. And if you have cryptographic agility, you can easily like plug and play and use different schemes for different use cases. And also beware of like not using NIST standards or NIST candidates at least. So using other schemes that haven't been scrutinized by the community, I'd be very wary about doing that. And yeah, I mean, we've had some attacks, and don't be surprised if we see any more. This does mean that things are working. As a community, we're working towards making secure implementations of post-quantum. There's some things that we still haven't looked at as much as AES or elliptic curves, side channels, for example, secure implementations. How this affects performance is also a problem that needs to be solved. And yeah, like I said, cryptanalysis attacks are expected and positive, I think, in my opinion. So yeah, it will take time as well. So I think we're looking at getting standards for these 4 schemes in the next couple of years. I'm sure we'll see some more scrutiny by then, especially when it comes to what parameters we select for these schemes. And integrating this into the real world, into every use case that we need it for, is going to be a long process, 5 to 10 years at least. Yeah, it's a long path, but there's lots of really smart people looking at this. So yeah, I wouldn't worry. I think that's everything I wanted to say, but I've got loads of time for questions. Yep. Whether they're using elliptic curves or the RSA is just going to be vulnerable to quantum attacks. So, yeah. The only thing, I mean, I haven't read all the literature on this, but I think they just have faith in the schemes that they've selected, that NIST have selected. I don't know why they're going with that. They're not the most open people, so yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Yeah. How long until a quantum computer? I think there was a study recently that I think 15 years maybe. I think lots of researchers think that there'll be a quantum computer by 30 years. I think there's a survey on this. I can't think of who did it, but there is research on. They basically asked physicists, when do you think there will be a quantum computer? Sorry? I'm not a quantum physicist. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised 15, 20 years, I'd say. Yeah. Yeah. So schemes that aren't in the NIST process will not get recognition. I can't. Sorry, I can't. Do you want to come? Yeah, oh, yeah. And get what? Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think it depends on what they're proposing. So if you're going with like a key sharing or a signature scheme, it's best to go through the traditional like route of being a NIST candidate. But when it comes to maybe a protocol design, for example, you might want to rework TLS to suit post-quantum, for example. Then you can go through like an IETF RFC. So you can propose a protocol change and then have scrutiny that way. So there are different ways to become like a standard, but yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on the paradigm, I guess. Thanks. Yeah. Oh, it does depend on signatures or chems, but it could be like 3 to 4 times. You're looking at like 4 or 5 fragments at least in like a TLS or something. But on the other side, I mean, the computation time is quite fast for some of the lattice schemes, so they kind of make up for it that way. But yeah. I think oh yeah, go. Okay. Okay. So yeah, the blockchain question, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, sorry. So why China are doing it differently? Also, not 100% sure, but I can give you my 2 cents. I think, yeah, they want a bit of control. They want to be in charge of their own standards. And they're not the only ones to do this. So Russia have their own standards, not post-quantum, but like they have in general. They have their own standards. Korea have their own standards. I'm not sure if China have finished. Like, it really depends on if you want to like sell stuff in the US. If you want to sell like security products in the US, you have to like use them as standards. So I don't know if they'll all follow the China, like if a Chinese company wants to. Yeah. Maybe they're just going against the grain. Sometimes they, like I can't remember which country it was that proposed a block cipher, but it was very, very similar to AES. So they might, and the standards that China did end up going with are very similar to dilithium and Kyber. So yeah, there's that. So yeah. Will we need post-quantum hardware acceleration? Yes. Yeah, I mean, you see that for all of the standards we have now, AES, elliptic curves. So you can kind of see that at the moment. So, I mean, with the hash function, for example, so they all need hash functions inside of them. So some implementations, you can see that as a bottleneck in the implementation. So having an instruction for that. So they use SHA-3 for in the process. So having speed ups for that is going to be a good way to speed up the overall scheme. Generating randomness as well. How they do that is going to be a key way to speed things up. Or a lot of the candidates that were selected lattice space use NTT multiplication. It's a different way to multiply polynomials. So if you can come up with an instruction to do that, for example, that would be also another way. I think if you've got it, you should use it, but you don't always have a GPU to use. But yeah, it'd be super cool to see how fast they could get with using a big percentage of the GPU or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, whether we should start experimenting with QKD and post-quantum, and yeah, I think that could be a good sort of academic project, or I've seen quite a lot of research on this as well. It's QKD is. I don't know if it will ever become sort of an industry standard or something the governments will like allow or encourage at least, because NSA, I know NCSC, they're not really interested in QKD, so whether, yeah, I don't know how that would work after that sort of strategy or that sort of saying, after they've said that, so, but as a concept, or it has its use cases, I think, like finance, for example, or telecoms, or I see lots of telecommunications companies experimenting with QKD. So yeah, I think they sort of naturally go hand in hand, post-quantum and QKD. So yeah, I think they could go quite well together, especially for the authenticated channel. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at. I can't imagine someone that hasn't gone to elliptic curves. Yeah, that's probably it's probably a good thing to do. I just struggle to understand what their infrastructure looks like without, yeah. Yeah. Do they still use SHA-1? Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like cryptographic agility like gives us some really cool ways to migrate. So like you can do, like it can sort of be agnostic to post-quantum as well. Like crypto agility by itself is like a really cool concept. And I think, yeah, it gives you a way to transition to anything. Like even if you want to get off SHA-1, like you could use cryptographic agility as well. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Thanks everyone.